Welcome to MSUA's Game Changers Live, where we speak with satellite and mobile connectivity thought leaders about industry trends, new technologies, and share what you need to know about where satellite technology is headed in the future. I'm your host, Lisa Dreer. Today, our guest is Nathan de Ruiter. He is the Managing Director at Euroconsult Canada. Thanks for joining us today, Nathan.
Thank you very much for having me, Lisa. Very looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, me too. So maybe we'll jump into the questions. We really invited you here today to talk a little bit about where you see things going. I know Euroconsult is right on the forefront of watching all of these trends. And maybe we can start by just having you talk a little bit about what you're feeling like the most important role that the satellite industry is playing in the future of mobile connectivity.
Yeah, no, that's a good starting point. I think, as you know, it comes a little bit to kind of what would you believe in, right? And I do believe in kind of connectivity, broadband connectivity anywhere at any time is going to be the future direction. I mean, we've talked a lot about, the next generation, our kids' expectations to be connected all the time. But even myself, I know if you think about putting me on a ship, working there and have no connectivity or watching my Netflix shows, I mean, it will be a pretty difficult time for me to be there. So I think that's the basic principle. If we believe and see that this need for connectivity is going to be ubiquitous in any shape or form, satellite has this natural play to complement terrestrial networks, right? We can go beyond where terrestrial networks are today. And if you look particular in mobile connectivity, there are about 250,000 ships, vessels, airplanes that are beyond the reach of terrestrial networks, and only today about 50% is connected by VSAT. So there's still a tremendous opportunity for our industry, and I think it will take time that all those vessel ships will be connected. I mean, when, there's obviously big questions, but we definitely see this progressing already over the last 10 years, and that will continue. So a tremendous opportunity for satellite to complement and hopefully as well more seamlessly integrate with terrestrial network solutions on land or in sea.
It's amazing, right? We just presume that we're going to be connected no matter where we go. And it's amazing how much we have places where we're still not connected.
Yeah, I mean, it's an obvious, we talked about already, mentioned the seas, but, even myself was on holiday earlier last week, and, it's surprising to see, I'm based in Canada, there's so many parts of Canada where there's no connectivity. So still, again, satellite has a big role to play to help to bring that kind of ubiquitous coverage of broadband connectivity.
Yeah, without a doubt. When you think about the most significant changes that are coming, I don't know, over the next 24, 36, I don't know, more maybe, months, what are you looking at?
Well, definitely the one thing that I'm most kind of excited about in the next 2 to 3 years is obviously the MSUA constellations. We've talked so much about it, right? Yeah. But now we're really at this point that service is going to be rolled out, right? Starlink is its beta service. OneWeb will start its service over the northern latitudes, I think by the end of the year. Then you have next year Viasat launching Viasat 3. It's more geo program and another kind of big programs. There's all these massive investments that we have seen, people have talked about. We're now going to finally see the kind of the commercial uptake, right? So how are customers responding to it? How quickly is the capacity being utilized? What are the price points? What is the exact kind of service performance they can provide? I mean, that will be a fascinating time to look and witness. And also, it's a pretty important part of the industry, right? I mean, I think so much money being spent, is it really be able to, accelerate and drive the growth of the industry along with these kind of new deployments of those new networks? I think that's the number one topic I think that we'll have to see. I think the other part, obviously, as well, that comes a little bit along with that as well, and speaking particularly about mobile connectivity, the recovery of the aero IFC and the cruise markets. Clearly, those markets has been the key drivers of our markets pre-COVID, and
Mhm.
they're like often one of the key target markets for these NGSO constellations as well, or the big GEO VHS programs. So, it's pretty crucial for this industry that we would see this recovery taking place. Currently, we don't expect that, to really be fully at pre-COVID levels before 2022. But again, I talked to this before, right? I do think that this underlying kind of structural drive towards connectivity at airplanes or at vessels, either cruise, merchant ships, leisure yachts, I think it's still undeniable. So I think, there was this pause, but we're still pretty firm and firm believer in that this connectivity, drive will kind of reaccelerate when we kind of way past this kind of COVID restrictions period.
Sure. When you actually, you guys are about ready to release the latest edition of your Euroconsult, the flagship report that you do every year for the satellite connectivity. Ooh, can you give us a preview at all of what your findings have been?
Sure. Yeah. We're kind of putting the last kind of bits to the report, but definitely, happy to share some of our results. So this report is kind of looking at the kind of full comprehensive view of the satellite capacity, demand, and supply, and forecasting it obviously over the next 10 years. Are a couple of interesting things. So clearly, 2020 has been a tough year. We've kind of measured it around or that a kind of a market value reduction of about 5%. So clearly a downside year, and it's kind of a combination of first a structural decline in the video broadcasting business that is still kind of continuing, which has been typically kind of the main source of revenue and driving market revenues in the past, and as well the COVID-19. So I already touched on the mobility sector being significantly down in 2020, and as well some other issues in terms to supply chain has kind of delayed some of the growth that we initially expected for 2020. But again, I think when we've done the interviews, we already see some of those projects picking up, and the structural kind of underlying drivers has not necessarily changed. So looking kind of forward, which obviously is one of the main features of the report, we'd see kind of a clear growth acceleration, I would say, from 2022 and onwards. That leads to kind of a doubling of the market value by 2030. So we remain pretty positive and bullish about the prospects for the satellite capacity demand. And what kind of stands out, I think, is the consumer broadband. So Starlink has been running their beta servers. They've declared some of their initial numbers. The subscribers have been able to attract. We think as well when they able to kind of get into kind of full commercial service, they will need to accelerate that particular kind of demand. And then on top of that, you have Hughes and Viasat launching new capacity. So consumer broadband and connecting kind of the bridging the digital divide is one of the key kind of growth elements. And then obviously mobility, we already talked about it, right? And we do actually, for example, see that mobility, the market value of mobility connectivity, would equal video broadcast by the end of the forecast period. So it really kind of, you see again, some of the growth or kind of declines in the video broadcasting market would be kind of compensated by the focus in towards data markets, which mobility is one of the key kind of growth markets. And the other thing which I think is very positive, when we looked in the last 12 months, you see this kind of enforced kind of embracement of governments of satellite connectivity programs. So multiple examples, you look at Indonesia with the Satria program, which really drives to help kind of connecting schools, hospitals across the country in rural parts. Also here in Canada, for example, where the government have made major commitments to support the Telesat program to kind of help connecting northern communities in Canada. And as I pointed out, really, there's a lot of areas that either have limited connectivity or even no connectivity at all in parts in Canada. So again, I think this government support would help the industry as well to drive the growth of the market and to roll out their services. So I think, again, it has been a tough year, 2020, I think, in many respects. But the underlying kind of drivers, I think, are looking positive for the industry.
Yeah, and it's amazing, right? We're already 3/4 of the way through 2021. So
Yeah, and 21 is going to be still a little bit of a challenging year as we see it, because again we're still trying to get ours around the COVID. So I think 2021 is going to not be as bright as we maybe hoped for, but past that, and again a big driver as well, just the new system launches that we already discussed earlier. That should really facilitate market growth.
great. When you look at all of this and the services both that are available today and that are coming online, what are some of the criteria that user organizations, so businesses, enterprises, or governments that are looking at using, or government organizations that are looking at using satellite connectivity, what are some of those criteria they need to be considering and looking at?
Yeah, I think the real kind of challenge today is to find for those organizations, because there's so much new developments into the market, and it depends a little bit on some of, maybe if you are a government network, civil government network, you can more easily change. But if you talk about airlines, if you talk about cruise, or if you talk about merchant shipping, these are big investments for those companies, and making the right investment, it's tough, right? There's so much new technologies. You don't want to be locked into a solution that you can't kind of change when there's like a new technology coming available. At one point early in the year was also some questions, would those constellations fully be available? So it's a kind of rapidly changing market environment, and I think the customers, they all have different requirements. Like a merchant ship, for example, doesn't need as much throughput as maybe a cruise ship, obviously. So the solutions in this market can be very different, attractive, relatively to your user requirements. So I think when we try to help some of those end users as well to work out the technology roadmap, to understand from what is when is coming. But if you look at general, I think what are the kind of the key user requirements is, it's typically it's about reliability, which the satellite industry has provided for a long time, and I think it's some of the things that they probably don't want to give up too much about it. But then really working on the elements as like kind of the data availability, either being in data caps or in service speeds, which there has been progress in it, but I think it's certainly not as the same you would expect to receive at home. So the user experience in terms of available throughputs is still an area that people would like to see to be improved, and obviously the new technologies that will come to the market should be able to kind of bridge that gap. Yeah. And I think still the biggest pain point, because a lot of these users, it's still the use of bandwidth is a cost driver, right? So bringing down the cost at the end is a crucial point in any customer requirement. And most of the people still think satellite capacity is still quite expensive, right? And obviously when it's a cost, the lowest cost is zero, where it will not get to, but helping them to bring down those costs, or maybe more efficient use of the capacity bandwidth. So putting some tools into place that you basically really only use the capacity when you fully need it for. There's different ways to approach it, but it's I think it's a quickly evolving market, but I think the underlying kind of drivers or your requirements about reliable communication, about cost effectiveness, and the best performance, meeting the requirements in terms of data rates or potentially latency and so on, are kind of the key criteria that it still revolves around.
Yeah. So shop around, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, shop around, get yourself informed, and that's definitely the period where we're in. So.
Yeah, and definitely in a moment of lots of change, and with all of the new networks coming online, all the new constellations coming online, it will be interesting to see how that impacts just that additional capacity impacts pricing as well.
Yeah, no, obviously, that's, it's impressive, and just looked at the numbers as well. If you just see in the next 4 years, supply will increase tenfold, like from 40 terabits to like 40 terabits, and it's like kind of obviously this massive amount, and it's more cost-effective capacity.
Yeah.
And it will be interesting to see how that translates into, we have some views, but I mean, how that does translate into prices. But it's kind of, I think, in general, if you look from an a lot of these merchant ships, for example, you already have a monthly budget, right? So how much better performance can you, if you stabilize your budget, how much better performance you can get? I think it can be tremendous shifts into the user experience on the ship or on a plane, because these new assets kind of facilitate this improvement, step improvement in terms of performance.
Absolutely. So talking about kind of new things, when you look at the new technologies that are coming into the market, what are some of the technologies that you're really following, and what do users need to consider as those things come onto the market, and how do they position themselves so they're ready to leverage those new technologies?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very interesting point, because if you kind of look across, let's say, within the satellite communication network, it's what we kind of call like a digitization or smartification of the network. And that kind of starts with the satellites itself. So you see what we call more software-defined satellites, right? And what it really does is trying to bring more capacity where it's needed for, and rather being more ubiquitous, really be able to bring capacity over high demand spots. So let's think about an airport. Like the planes that circulate around airports drive a lot of capacity requirements. So I think this kind of smart, improving the intelligent use of capacity is kind of a key thing. And I think it's very important for users to understand how much capacity these assets can bring in really the areas where I need it the most, right? But also on the ground, we see a lot of improvement in intelligent kind of network systems, because with all these new assets, thinking about these NGSO, GEO, you want to make use of the best kind of technology. So routing some of the traffic over a LEO network, over a GEO network, or for example, the video might be better served over a GEO network. Well, there may be some more latency and sensitive networks or applications being better served by NGSO. So we've seen this development in more intelligent traffic routing, which would really help, I think, as well. Kind of developing this new application. I think that's kind of key. We've not really talked about it, and I think it's something that is more and more recognized. We want to be, at the end of kind of the holy grail here, I would say, to from an end user experience to kind of seamlessly roam or network across the different satellite technologies. And then the next step would be to be able to integrate it into the terrestrial networks as well. Because again, as many have said, like an end user at the end doesn't really care that much where it's connected from, but being really able to bring satellite connectivity in kind of the wider network orchestration. There's a lot of, I think, technical challenges that currently people are working for to solve that. But the trend of 5G, the trend of this virtualization, I think would help us to really be fully integrated into the terrestrial network layer as well. And I think that's the true benefit, what at the end users are seeking. So a lot of work put into that, and I think we'll hopefully to be able to see that in the next years to become really orchestrated and be proven. So I think still a lot of work for the satellite industry ahead of us to make that happen.
Sure. Well, Nathan, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing your insights on satellite mobile connectivity.
Thank you, Lisa, and kudos to you and MSUA team. Happy to see all your efforts in the industry. It's very important for us, and hope to see you soon again.
Absolutely. And I also want to take a moment to thank the Mobile Satellite Users Association for hosting these sessions. To learn how to become a member, which we have early bird memberships for 2022 available right now on our join page on our website at msua.org MSUA.org/join. Or if you just want more information about MSUA and all of the great communications that we have a weekly newsletter, all kinds of great information, and we provide a lot of benefits to our members. If you're interested in learning more, please visit MSUA.org. And we'll see you next time on MSUA Game Changers Live.